This is the last call for passengers travelling to Rome on Alitalia flight 571, due to leave at 12:40. Will any remaining passengers please go immediately to gate 12?
Hi ladies, welcome back to another episode of Don't Quote Me on That. If you're new here, hi, my name is Gabriela. Welcome to Don't Quote Me on That. And if you're coming back, I'm happy to see you again. Happy Sunday. I hope you had an amazing week. I hope everyone had an amazing week. And now let's get into it. Woo!
Good morning. Can you talk? I really need coffee. I'm so stressed. I was up studying. I'm gonna be late to class. I'll call you later. I just want to be lazy right now. I should probably go to the gym. I'm hungry. Want to hang out? I don't know anyone going tonight. I'm kind of freaking out. Does this look good? It's gonna be so much fun though. I can't wait. And yeah, that's what I would do. Just don't quote me on that.
A couple of days ago, I posted on my Instagram story asking you guys to let me know what episodes you guys wanted me to do and what you guys want to talk about. And a very requested episode is talking about being Latina, because I am from Colombia, and moving to the US, my journey moving to the US, because moving somewhere, whatever country you're moving to, any culture that is different to yours is hard, and the adaptation process is hard. So I'm going to tell you guys the story of me moving to the US, the challenges I faced, and sort of like the advice that I would give to anyone moving to anywhere, or whether you're moving schools, just like advice I would give for any like big transition in your life. So this is my story as a first generation immigrant, as a first generation Latina moving to the US. I moved to the United States 2018. So we moved in the summer. My birthday is at the end of August. So we moved right when I was 12, about to turn 13. Now I'm 20. So we moved 7 years ago. And we moved to Miami. My parents had the apartment in Miami, so we had always had an apartment in Miami, but it was more like a summer apartment and like a summer home. And then my parents finally made the decision of moving to the US. They had always wanted to move to the US, and moving to Miami was always the plan. We moved into that apartment, we moved into our summer home, and it becomes our new home. When we moved to Miami, I thought that it was going to be an easy adaptation, and I thought that it was going to be easy to move to Miami, just because Miami is a very Latin city still, and there's a lot of Latinos in Miami. So it's like, okay, like Miami is just an extension of South America, you know, like I'm going to be home away from home. And that wasn't the case. Miami was still very different, of course, because it's a different country. And that was very shocking, how different it was to what I expected. Honestly, the biggest difference that you notice is the language. I learned English when I was 3 years old. So at school in Colombia, they taught me English. So when I moved to the US, I knew how to speak English, but I knew how to speak basic English. Like at school, they teach you how to say the basic things, how to say car, how to say mom, how to say dad, you know, but they don't teach you the colloquial language. They don't teach you the slang. They don't teach you how to say makeup words in English, for example. So I always tell the story when I first moved here, and all of my friends in Miami were doing their makeup when they were 13 when I moved. Everyone was 13 doing their makeup, which was very different to Bogota, because no girl in Bogota was doing their makeup. So that was cool because I loved makeup. And we went to Sephora together for the first time with my friends, and I really wanted to get a mascara. Now I know how to say mascara. Like I know that pestañina is mascara. But when I moved here, I had no idea how to say mascara, because in school they're not going to teach you that. You know, they're not going to teach you like this is how you say blush and like this is how you say mascara. They don't teach you that. So I pulled up to Sephora and I was like, "Hey, can I get a pestañine?" Yep, I said pestañine because pestañina, like pestañine, you know, pestañina, pestañine. It made sense in my head, but it's mascara, and I know that now. So that I always tell that story because I think it's hilarious, but it's also just, it shows like the language barrier and what I mean by the language barrier, because I knew how to speak English, but it was still hard to talk to my friends because it was a 24/7 thing. Like in Colombia, I only had to speak English to my teachers, but at home and with my friends, it was in Spanish. Now my friends were in English too. So talking to them about things was weird because then they would use these words that it was like, a different language to me. I was like, do I even know English? When they would be like, yo, bro, like that's so dope. And we're going to go to a Getty. Like, what is a Getty? You know, what is a Getty? And then they had to explain me that. You know what became my best friend when I moved to the US? Urban Dictionary. Urban Dictionary was and still is sometimes my best friend. Whenever I was at a Getty and at a meeting with people and they said something that I had no idea what the hell it meant, immediately on my phone, Urban Dictionary, what does cocky mean? Like, what does dope mean? Things like that. One time we were in class and I took this pencil that had like sparkles on top or something like that. It was a very extra pencil. But do you think I knew what the hell extra meant? Like, someone was like, oh my God, you're so extra. I got so offended because I didn't know what it meant. And I was like, extra? What do you mean extra? And then I went back home and same thing. I was like, Mom, I got called extra. Like, what does it mean? And then I Googled it and like Urban Dictionary again. And Urban Dictionary was like, you do a lot of things. Like, you do a lot. So that was probably a big thing. Like, I still felt like I couldn't properly communicate with my friends. And that was hard. I didn't get their jokes. They didn't get mine. Jokes do not translate the same way. And if you think that jokes translate the same way, then I don't know, but they don't. Like, jokes do not translate the same way. And I tried translating jokes from Spanish to English. They're not funny. Like, they're not funny. So yeah, that was something that was hard for me. English, even though I knew how to speak English. Besides from the language, the culture is very different. I thought Miami was going to be this Latinized version of America, but it's not. It's the US. At least like in my case, like Colombia is a very and more like conservative country than the US. So when I moved here, it was definitely different to see so many like liberalism in a way. Not that it's a bad thing or anything. I wish Colombia was more like this. But when I moved here, a lot of my classmates belonged and formed a part of the LGBTQ plus community. And basically none of my friends in Colombia formed a part of that community. Not because they didn't form a part of the community, just because Colombia is a little bit more conservative and doesn't create that like environment for kids to be open. It's more open now, but when I was 13, 7 years ago when I moved in Colombia, like I said, I had no gay friends or transgender friends. And now in the US, I moved here and a lot of my friends were. So that was something that was awesome for me to see like this much acceptance. That was really cool. It was also really cool to see a lot of diversity because, again, like everything I'm saying is from my experience because in like the contrast between Colombia specifically and like Bogota to Miami specifically. So Bogota is completely full of Colombianos. Like there's only Colombians in Colombia or a few here and there like immigrants. There's more immigrants. But at my school, we were all from Bogota. And now in Miami, there was a lot of diversity. And I had African-American friends and Latin friends, Caucasian friends, Middle Eastern friends, Asian friends. And that was awesome. I love that, which I didn't get in Colombia. So that was really cool. And I love that the diversity that I get now in the United States, amazing. Miami is also Miami. Like Miami is crazy and everybody does whatever the hell they want in Miami, which I also love because in Bogota, like I said, it's a very conservative place. So people like dress very similarly and very conservatively. And it's more of like a closed community. But in Miami, nobody gives a crap what you're wearing or how you're dressed, what you look like. Everybody does them, you know? Like you can go to the same restaurant and someone's going to be wearing sweatpants. Somebody's going to be in a mini skirt and a tank top. Someone's going to be ready for the Oscars and then someone's going to be in their pajamas. So, and a bathing suit. Like it's crazy, but it's cool because you're free to express yourself however you want, wear as much or as little makeup as you want, and no one judges you, like, because everyone's so focused on their own thing, and it's Miami. Like I said, Miami is crazy. So for me, that was also awesome. Being able to wear whatever I wanted, do my makeup, and feel like I could express myself openly, I loved that. And I feel like I really found my sense of style and fashion and beauty and makeup in the United States. And then there was obviously things that were not so cool about the culture, such as hookup culture. When I was 13 and I moved to Miami, all of my friends in Bogota, we were like starting to have our first kisses. Like, I still hadn't had my first kiss. But a couple of my friends here and there were starting to have their first kiss when we were 13. I moved to Miami, and then all of my friends in Miami, they were all like, oh yeah, you know, first base, second base, third base. And I was like, whoa, and we're the same age? Whoa. So hookup culture, that I did not like, because I was very used to the romantic culture and the relationship culture that we have in Bogota and in Colombia, which is like you date a guy for a couple of years or like months and you're like very serious with them. And then you start getting physical with them. And like you have your first boyfriend when you're like older and your first kiss when you're older. I don't know. That's just more like the culture. And then the culture in Miami was the opposite of that. And everybody was like, oh yeah, we're doing all of these things when we're 14. So that was like, okay, what do I do? Because I don't feel comfortable and ready to like jump there. And I felt like all my friends were crazy, not gonna lie to you. I felt like all my friends were like a little too advanced. I'm not saying you are if you're 14, but just because of my upbringings and the way I grew up, for me, that was crazy. Like hookup culture was crazy. And the not having a boyfriend and just getting with random people, that was a cultural shock when I was 13. Obviously, the longer you spend in a place, the more you sort of like adapt to their culture. So I kind of understood like, okay, this is the dynamic of like the US and the dynamic of Miami. Again, reiterate, this is very important because Miami boys are the kings of hookup culture. And that's kind of why I left Miami too. It's impossible to date anyone in Miami. They're crazy. We can talk about a whole episode of dating in Miami. I can literally talk about that for like an hour. So I accepted the culture, but that doesn't mean that you have to participate in the culture. I had my first boyfriend a year ago when I was 18. I also didn't make friends easy. The first couple of months of school, I had lunch by myself. The first couple of days, I had lunch at the bathroom by myself because I didn't have friends. And it was the first like half of the first year that I didn't have friends. And that was really discouraging. It was really discouraging just not feeling at home and not feeling like I belonged. All of the changes made my first couple of months in the US very hard. I cried a lot. I wanted to go back to Bogota. I kept calling Bogota home. Like when my friends would ask me like, oh, where are you going like for the holidays? I was like, I'm going back home. Like Bogota was home. And I was like, home, Bogota. You know, I wanted to go home. I missed it a lot. I told my parents at some point, I was like, I'm going to go back and finish school in Bogota. Like, I can't do this. I don't like this. I like my culture. I like my country, my people, my language. Like, I don't want to be here. And I wanted to root the piece of advice that I'm going to give you guys. If you're moving to a different country, if you moved already, or if you're going to ever, or just in general in life for any change, the thing that hurt me the most, and I feel like the reason I had the hardest time adapting to the US, was because before I even got here, I made a whole bunch of expectations and I made myself this whole like picture of what it was going to look like. And then I got here and it wasn't. My mom always tells me this saying, and it's in Spanish, el que espera sufre. And that literally translates to the one that expects suffers. Obviously, when you expect something and when you have an expectation that something's going to turn out a certain way and then it doesn't, it's a lot more disappointing than if you had gone into it with an open mind and with no expectation set. And that's what I think happened to me because before I even got to the US, I made this like whole idea in my head that I was going to get here and I was going to make a bunch of friends. I was going to get a boyfriend right away and this guy was going to really like me and I was going to be super popular at school and I was going to join the volleyball team and I was going to be like team captain. Seriously, like that is the whole idea that I made myself in my head. That's what I thought Miami was going to look like. And none of those things happened. I got to Miami. I made no friends the first 6 months of school, had lunch by myself at the toilet, not even at the dining hall, because at this point I was not comfortable with sitting by myself. I'm 13 years old. Like, don't forget that. Like, I was 13. At this point, I hated sitting by myself. Now I'm comfortable with that. But 13-year-old me, pobrecita, like, she was not going to sit by herself. So 13-year-old me had lunch in the bathroom. That was depressing for her. 13-year-old me got rejected by every single boy in Miami. No boy in Miami wanted me at all. They all wanted to hook up with me, but I didn't want that. I wanted a boyfriend. So that was devastating that I didn't get a boyfriend right away. It was devastating to find out that I tried out for volleyball and I was immediately shot to like JV, but not even JV, like JV bench. Like, coach already knew that he was accepting me into JV, maybe out of like pity or just needing like more spaces for the team. But he knew that I was going to be benched the entire season. And the one time that he put me in a game, I had to receive the volleyball. And instead of like getting ready to serve it, I ducked and I swerved it. I ducked and I swerved it. I literally went like this. I was like, the ball went right by me. And it obviously the other team scored. Everybody hated me. So all of those things happened, and it was literally the opposite of what I expected and this picture that I had made in my head. So if I could give 13-year-old me a little piece of advice before she moves to the US, I would tell her, I'd be like, hey, 13-year-old Gabi, come here. Listen, before you go, those expectations and that whole like, esa idea que te metiste en la cabeza, that like idea that you made yourself in your head, get rid of it. All those 20 friends that you think you're going to get right away, get rid of it. The boyfriend, get rid of it. The volleyball team, get rid of it. Go into it thinking absolutely nothing. Expect nothing of the situation. Nothing. I like literally go into it with a completely empty head. Like dumb. Like just blank out your brain. Because when you expect nothing, you appreciate everything. So if you expect 0 friends, and you get 1, you know how much you're going to appreciate that one friend. If you expect to get rejected by every single guy and 2 guys throw themselves at you, you know what that's going to mean. Like, you get what I'm saying? Obviously, if you don't expect anything, everything that you get is appreciated so much. And the opposite is true. If you expect a lot, well, when it doesn't happen, the disappointment is just twice as much and like twice as painful. And that's why it cost me a lot to adapt to the US. And that's why it was a little hard because I had this picture perfect idea. But then things naturally started to turn around and I made 1 friend and then she introduced me to her friends. And then I started having more friends. I never got the boy. I still had a crush on that one boy for the 2 years that I was in Miami before going to boarding school. So never got the boy, just a dumb crush for 2 years. And fun fact, he goes to college here in Boston. Like I bump into him all the time with his girlfriend and with my boyfriend now. So life is a circle. But yeah, didn't get the boyfriend ever. I started slowly to get friends. Volleyball, I had to quit because the JV thing was just too embarrassing. So I started to do swimming again, which is what I had always done and what I've always been good at. But naturally, it became home. And now I'm going home. I'm going home tomorrow. And that's why I wanted to film this episode this week because I'm going home tomorrow. And home is Miami now because home is where my parents are. Home is where my sister is. Home is where my family is. Home is not a place. Bogota used to be my home, and it was for majority of my life. But now Miami is my home. And it took me a really long time to like Miami because even after I went to boarding school and I wasn't in Miami, like I still didn't like Miami because it scarred me from how horrible of a time I had the first time moving there. It was hard adapting to Miami. So I didn't start liking Miami until 2 years ago, but I eventually did. And you get used to the culture and you get used to it by just accepting that you're in a place that's different to yours and their ways of being are different to yours. But just because it's different doesn't mean it's bad. They have a different culture. They have a different way of doing things, but different isn't bad. It's just their way of doing things. And you have your own culture, which you also shouldn't lose. Just because I moved to the US doesn't mean that I lost my spice and being Latina and everything that makes me Colombiana and me. And I'm very proud of being Latina, very proud of being Colombiana. And I still make sure to bring my culture everywhere. Like even in the US where people don't like to kiss other people when they say hi, like a kiss on the cheek when you're saying hi, I still will go up to Americans and hug them and give them a kiss on the cheek because that is my culture. Sure, I might be in the US, but I'm not going to lose my essence, you know? Some of my friends here didn't grow up like saying thank you, please, things like that. That is something that in my culture was very harshly instilled in us. Manners were very instilled in us. So that's something that I bring with me everywhere. I refuse to lose touch with who I am, and I am Colombiana. Soy Latina, and I'm never gonna lose that. But that doesn't mean that I'm going to reject and completely disadapt to the new culture that I'm in. Thanksgiving. Now I celebrate Thanksgiving. And I don't even celebrate Thanksgiving because we have sushi for Thanksgiving. But we still have Thanksgiving now, which is not a thing in Colombia. And as a first generation Latina, I know it's very easy to lose your culture and to get like really just swallowed by the American culture or by like whatever culture you're going to move to. And I didn't want that to happen to me. So for me, it's very important to make sure that I always practice my Spanish, like to make sure that I don't lose my accent in Spanish. Que te puedo hablar así rapidísimo en español. Like, I don't want to lose that. I refuse to have an American accent when I speak Spanish. You know, that's never going to happen. And if that ever happens, call someone. Call someone. If you hear me hablando en español así, call someone. And if you're a first generation immigrant, this is always going to happen. For like my Colombian friends, I'm too like Americanized. And for my American friends, I'm like too Latina. So I'm like, what am I? What am I? Who am I, people? Who am I, guys? No, I'm kidding. I know who I am. I'm Latina, and now I live in the United States. And I've adapted to that culture, but I'm not going to lose my culture. I'm the white stuffing in the Oreo, you know? Like I'm in the middle of it. And at first it bothered me when my friends in Bogota would be like, ay, estás muy gringa. Like you're very like gringa. And the fact that they would call me a gringa, that bothered me. I was like, no, do not call me gringa. Like, do not. And then here, all my American friends, they were like, you're still like, you're so Latina. And like your accent. Because when I moved here, I had a very strong accent in Spanish and in English, like a very strong Spanish accent in English. And that also kind of bothered me because I felt like they were making fun of me. And then you come to accept both things. Now, when my friends are like, I see it as muy gringa. Like, yes, I've been living in the US. Of course, I'm going to be more Americanized. I've been here for 7 years. And of course, I'm not going to ever be 100% gringa because I'm Latina at heart. And I am Latina. Not at heart, like literally Latina. So you find a balance and you find a place in your heart for both places, for both cultures, for both languages. And the process of adaptation for everyone is completely different. My sister had a very easy process when adapting. She was like a lot younger than me, so maybe that made it easier for her. But she never had a hard time. She never struggled with making friends. For her, it was easy. For me, it was hard. You know, so everybody has a different experience, so I can't tell you exactly how it's gonna go. I don't know. I have no idea. But what I can tell you is that don't go into it expecting anything out of it. And let this be a lesson like for life in general. And this is why I'm including this episode in the soul category, because just for your heart and for your peace of mind, for anything ever that you do, go into it with just an open mind, no expectations. Don't expect anything. Porque el que espera, sufre. If you expect and it doesn't happen, you're going to suffer. And it's hard because naturally we expect things out of life. And when we're making transitions and when we're moving and when we're changing things in our life, we expect really good outcomes of these things. So obviously and naturally, we're going to do that. We're going to expect people to do things. We're going to expect things to happen. We're going to expect. But the more we try to expect less and the less expectations we have, the more we appreciate the unexpected. And the less the disappointment is if it doesn't go your way. And if right now you just moved somewhere and you're having a hard time adapting, please know that it's not easy. Adapting to a new country, to a new culture, a new language, it's never easy. But it's also not impossible, and it also takes time. It is a process of patience. It's not the same place. So you can't get there and expect things to just work. It's very different. So give it time. It doesn't happen overnight. Month 4 into living in Miami, I was done with Miami. And year 3 and year 5 living in Miami, I was done with Miami. And then year 7, now I'm moving back to Miami. So no, moving to the US was not an easy thing for me. 13-year-old Gabi had a really hard time. But now, 20-year-old Gabi could not be more excited to go back home tomorrow, to go back to Miami. I get to see my parents tomorrow. My sister's not going to be home though, which is extremely sad because she has a freaking like trip with her like Model United Nations thing or something, which like good for her, you know, like I'm very proud of her for like getting on the trip because I know you had to like apply and whatever, but she's not going to see me. I'm not going to see her. I'm very sad. I miss my sister. But I do get to see my parents, which I'm very excited about. And I'm also leaving my dog here because it's a 3-day trip. So I'm not going to take him with me to Miami. I'm going to leave him with my boyfriend. That's why I'm at my boyfriend's house. I forgot to address that completely. I'm at my boyfriend's house sitting on his kitchen countertop while he does some homework. But yeah, I'm going to leave my dog with him. We'll see how that goes. I hope they behave. No girls while I'm gone. But I am going back home tomorrow. I get to see my parents. I miss them so much. Even though like we already moved to Miami and that process was hard of adapting. Now I'm in college in a different state. So even being in the same country, just for school, being in a different state and like being away from your parents, being an immigrant kid honestly comes with a lot of sacrifices because you're leaving your home for your education and for this better life of the American dream. And that's why I titled it The American Dream, because that's why we moved here. We moved here because my parents wanted to give me a better life, a more secure life, more opportunities, safety, like actual and physical safety. So I feel like even if I would have had like a really hard time all of these years, if you're the kid of an immigrant, you know this. You appreciate as a child so much the work that your parents are putting. And if you're very young right now and you still don't see that, like if you're very young right now and you're really pissed off because your parents just moved you to the United States and you want to go back home, you want to leave, please just know that it's an amazing sacrifice your parents are making. Moving you to the United States, which is not a cheap country, moving you to a different culture, a different language, they're doing all of that for you and to give you the best life that they can give you. And if it's not the US and they're moving you to a different country for whatever reason, they're trying to give you the best. And it's not easy for them either. So even if we're having a hard time, guys, if you're Latino like me or an immigrant like me, like let's appreciate the hard time that we're having, because that means that we're very blessed to be able to be where we are and very blessed to have moved. It's not easy on them either. And it's not easy on you, but don't forget that. And I remind myself of that all the time. So with that note, I can't wait to see them. I can't wait to see my parents tomorrow. Get a little bit of sun because Boston is so cold right now. And I hope some of you were able to relate. And I hope that if you're moving right now or if you're having like any change in your life, that advice can help you. That go into things with no expectations so you can appreciate all of it and really soak it in. So that was my journey moving here. Those were the struggles that came with it. Those were also the blessings that came with it. It's been a ride. It's been an interesting ride, but I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. And I don't know what my life would have been like if I would have stayed in Bogota. I guess we'll never know. But I will forever be grateful to my parents for trying to give me this American dream. And I try my hardest every day to repay them by working hard, being the best daughter I can be. The vlog for this week is me traveling to Miami and then the weekend at home with my parents. So enjoy the vlog. I hope you guys had a good time talking, and I'll see you next Sunday.